How dare you call me a burden? I typed, my hands shaking, when I still have screenshots of you begging me for rent money, groceries, and even gas last month. For a moment, I stared at the glowing words on the screen, unsure if I should hit send. But then I thought of all the likes, the laughing emojis, the smirks beneath their cruel post about me, and rage steadied my hand. I pressed enter, and within seconds, the comment lit up the thread like fire catching dry grass. It hadn't started this way. Months before that humiliating Facebook war, we had still been family. Or at least that was the word they loved to toss around when they needed something. I can still remember the first time they reached out in desperation. It was late, nearly midnight, when my phone buzzed with a message. "Hey, can you spot me $200? I'm in a bad spot. Promise I'll pay you back Friday." That was from Mia, my cousin. The same cousin who would later plaster her Facebook wall with a passive-aggressive post about how some people are just dead weight in life. Back then, though, she was soft-spoken, apologetic, even embarrassed. I replied almost instantly, "Yeah, I got you. Don't worry about it." Her relief was immediate. "You're a lifesaver. I swear I'll pay you back." Of course, Friday came and went, but no repayment followed. I didn't press. Family, right? Besides, I remembered when I'd been the one broke, scrambling for help. I thought I was investing in good karma. But soon, it wasn't just Mia. It was her brother Jason calling me one afternoon while I was at work. "Look, man," he began, his voice low and sheepish. "Car's dead. I need about $350 to get it fixed, or I can't get to work. Can you help?" I hesitated that time. My rent was due in 2 weeks, and I wasn't exactly rolling in spare cash. "That's a lot," I muttered. "Please," Jason pressed. "I'll figure out a way to get it back to you. Just, please, don't leave me hanging." I sighed and agreed, convincing myself once again that family meant sacrifice. The problem was, the sacrifices piled up. Each week, it seemed, another request came in. Sometimes it was cash, sometimes it was groceries, sometimes it was just my Uber account borrowed for a couple rides. I told myself I was being kind, being dependable. They told me I was solid and the only one they could count on. But kindness, I've learned, can turn into ammunition. The first crack showed itself during a barbecue. A casual Sunday gathering, laughter and music drifting through the backyard, drinks in hand, plates stacked with food. And then Mia, loud enough for everyone to hear, joked, "You know, if it weren't for us, my name would probably starve. Always hanging around, no real plan." People chuckled awkwardly. I smiled, pretending it didn't sting. But inside, my chest tightened. That wasn't true. I worked, I paid my bills. Sure, I wasn't rich, but I wasn't leaning on them. If anything, they leaned on me. Later, when I confronted her, she waved it off. "Oh my God, don't be so sensitive. It was a joke." I swallowed my pride, as I always did. And then came the Facebook post. A Sunday evening, casual scrolling, until the words hit me like a punch to the gut. Some people are just burdens. They take, they drain, they weigh you down. At some point, you gotta cut the dead weight. I froze. The comments below were filled with sympathetic nods, people chiming in about toxic relatives and users. And though she never mentioned my name, I knew. Because just the day before, Mia had asked me for $60 to tide her over. The more I stared, the more the fury burned. My hands trembled as I opened my photo album, the one where I'd been quietly saving every single screenshot. Every late-night please, every "I'll pay you back," every "you're the only one who understands." Each one a digital receipt of their hypocrisy. I scrolled back through messages. Mia. "Can you cash app me $150? Promise I'll get it back Friday." Jason. "Bro, help me out. Rent's short this month. I'll owe you big time." Mia. "Please, I need formula for the baby. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't serious." I had them all. Pages of them. So when I typed that reply, When I finally threw the first punch, I wasn't bluffing. You call me a burden? Funny, since I've got a whole gallery of screenshots showing you begging me for money. Should I post them here? Or would you like me to send them directly to your friends who think you so self-sufficient? The silence that followed was louder than any insult. I watched as the laughing emojis vanished from the thread, replaced by shocked reactions. People began tagging each other. Wait, what? Someone commented. Jason messaged me privately within minutes. Take it down. Don't air family business like that. I laughed bitterly and typed back, then maybe donned a lie about me in public. But I wasn't done. Not yet. I didn't sleep that night. My phone buzzed endlessly, a steady stream of messages, some from friends, some from family, some from complete strangers who'd stumbled into the comment war. Part of me felt exhilarated, like I'd finally ripped the mask off and let everyone see the truth. Another part of me felt sick, my heart racing with adrenaline, replaying the words I'd written again and again. By morning, the post was still up, but the comment section had shifted. What once had been full of mocking laughter now brimmed with questions, with skepticism, with people demanding answers from Mia. Wait, didn't you just post about needing gas money last week? One person wrote. Burden? Weren't you the one saying my name saved your ass more than once? Another added. The tide was turning, and Mia knew it. She deleted her post by noon, but the damage was already done. Screenshots weren't just my weapon, they were everyone's. People had already saved the thread, sharing it in group chats, whispering about it behind her back. Around lunchtime, I got the call. It was my aunt, her voice sharp. What the hell are you doing? She demanded. Me? I asked, my throat tight. What about Mia? She called me a burden in front of half the town. You don't air dirty laundry online? Family matters stay in the family. I laughed, bitter and tired. Funny. That rule didn't apply when they dragged me through the mud on Facebook. She sputtered, furious, and finally snapped, You need to take the high road. But I was done with roads that led nowhere. Later that evening, Jason showed up at my door. Not a call, not a message. He came in person, face red with anger. You're destroying her reputation, he spat before I could even say hello. She did that herself, I shot back. All I did was show the truth. Jason shoved a hand through his hair, pacing my porch. Do you know how bad this looks for us? People at work are talking. My friends are asking questions. You made us look like beggars. Because you were begging, I snapped. Don't twist this. You used me like an ATM and then called me worthless. Did you think I'd just sit here and take it forever? His jaw clenched. You don't understand. We were desperate. We didn't mean to make you look bad. Oh, but making me look like a parasite was fine? For a moment, we just stared at each other, the silence thick. Finally, Jason muttered, Delete the screenshots. No, I said simply. They stay. If you don't want people to see them, maybe don't send them in the first place. He swore under his breath and stormed off, but I knew this wasn't the end. That night, another post appeared on Facebook, this time from Jason himself. Some people thrive on drama. Instead of handling things privately, they go online for attention. Sad. He didn't name me, but the implication was clear. I almost replied right then and there, but instead I sat back and let others handle it. And to my surprise, they did. Drama? You mean the truth? One friend commented. Kinda rich, considering all the times you've begged for help, another chimed in. I didn't have to say a word. The crowd I'd once thought silent now spoke for me. But here's the thing about truth. It doesn't just set you free. It scorches, it burns, it leaves scars behind. And as much as I wanted to believe the screenshots would end it, I knew deep down that this was only the opening round of a fight that had been simmering for years. Because exposing someone isn't just about facts. It's about power. And Mia, Jason, and their crew, they weren't about to give it up without a war. The war began in whispers, At first, I noticed the change in how people looked at me. Neighbors, who used to nod politely, now lingered, curiosity in their eyes, as if wondering whether I'd explode again. Then came the sideways glances at the grocery store, the faint snickers I caught when I walked past groups of people. Word spread fast in our small circle, and not all of it was flattering. Mia wasn't stupid. If she couldn't silence me, she'd shift the story. She began telling anyone who'd listen that I was obsessed, that I'd been collecting receipts for years like a stalker, waiting for the perfect moment to humiliate her. She painted herself as the victim, a woman under attack by her bitter cousin. I didn't need to guess at what she was saying. Screenshots found their way to me. Messages between her and mutual friends, vague posts on her page. Imagine someone keeping track of every little thing you've ever asked for, just waiting to destroy you, she wrote one night, punctuated with a crying emoji. The comments poured in, sympathy and pity lapping at her feet like waves. I tried to ignore it. For a week, I stayed silent, convinced the storm would pass. But silence is dangerous. It allows lies to harden into truth. One evening, while scrolling, I saw a friend tag me in a comment under Mia's latest pity post. "Hey, didn't you say you helped her out a lot? What's the real story?" That was it, the trigger. I opened the folder on my phone, my private archive. There were dozens of screenshots, spanning months, maybe even years. Her begging for a little to get through the week, Jason promising, "I'll pay you back first thing Friday." Both of them circling back again and again like vultures. This time, I didn't just reply. I posted. A full status, carefully written, calm but devastating. I've kept quiet long enough. Since certain people want to play the victim while dragging my name through the mud, here are the facts. I've given out thousands over the past year to people who called me family. Rent money, gas money, groceries, even baby formula. I didn't ask for interest, didn't set deadlines. I helped because I cared. But those same people now call me a burden. To the friends who've seen their posts, here's the truth. And then, one by one, I attached the screenshots. Not all of them, just enough to prove my point beyond any doubt. Her asking for $200 at midnight. Jason begging for $350 for car repairs. Mia pleading for formula money. The reaction was instant. Comments exploded, some in my defense, others in disbelief. People tagged each other, dragged their friends into the thread. My phone buzzed so much it felt like it might overheat in my hand. Mia messaged me privately within an hour. "What the hell are you doing? Take that down now." "No," I replied. "You started this. You don't get to rewrite history." "You're ruining my life," she fired back. I stared at the screen, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. "Funny. You were perfectly fine ruining mine." Jason chimed in, his message more threatening. "You're going to regret this. You think people will side with you? They'll see you're petty and vindictive. Nobody respects a snitch." But he was wrong. For every person who criticized me, 3 others defended me. People were tired of their act, tired of being manipulated. My post didn't just expose them to me, it exposed them to everyone. Still, there was fallout. My aunt stopped speaking to me entirely. Some cousins unfriended me, siding with Mia and Jason. Others stayed neutral, their silence speaking louder than words. I realized then that family loyalty wasn't about truth, it was about comfort. And truth made people deeply uncomfortable. One night, sitting alone with my buzzing phone, I wondered if I'd gone too far. If maybe I should have let it go, swallowed the insult, pretended it didn't matter. But then I remembered the barbecue, the mocking laughter, the Facebook post calling me dead weight. No, enough was enough. And though I thought the screenshots were the end of it, I was wrong. Because when you expose someone's lies, you don't just destroy their mask, you corner them. And cornered people, they fight back in ways you don't see coming. The fight back came like a storm, sudden and messy, with no warning. The first blow was subtle, a message from my landlord. "I heard some concerning things about you. Can we set up a time to talk?" My stomach sank as I read it. When we met, he looked uncomfortable, almost embarrassed. "Someone told me you've been unstable," he began delicately. "Causing scenes online, harassing family. I just need to make sure everything's okay." I felt my jaw tighten. "Unstable? Who told you that?" He shifted in his chair. "I'm not at liberty to say." I didn't need him to. I knew. Mia and Jason had started their counterattack, and they were aiming for my credibility. If they couldn't silence me with guilt, they'd try to paint me as crazy. The next blow came through work. An anonymous email forwarded to HR. Links to my Facebook posts. Cherry-picked screenshots stripped of context, framed as evidence of erratic behavior. Thankfully, my boss knew me well enough to shrug it off, but I could feel the net tightening. They weren't just trying to discredit me, they wanted to ruin me. That weekend, I got a call from my friend Lena, her voice low and hesitant. "Hey, I just wanted to warn you. I was at the bar last night and Jason was there running his mouth. He's telling people you've got nothing going on, that you make up stories for attention. Said you're addicted to drama." I let out a bitter laugh. Classic projection. "Yeah, but people were listening," Lena warned. "Some believed him." That was when I realized this wasn't just an online spat anymore. It was a full-on smear campaign. I considered letting it go, taking the so-called high road, as my aunt had begged me to. But every time I thought about backing down, I remembered those late-night messages, those desperate pleas for money, the way they smiled in my face and spit behind my back. So I did what I do best. I documented. Every false rumor, every screenshot of their half-baked lies, every message from someone warning me about their gossip, I collected it all. If they wanted a war of narratives, I'd make sure mine had evidence while theirs had only hot air. But then came the twist I didn't expect. One evening, as I sat scrolling through my growing archive, I got a private message from someone I hadn't spoken to in years. Carla, a childhood friend of Mia's. "Hey," she wrote, "I don't know if I should get involved, but I can't stay quiet anymore. You're not the first person they've done this to." My fingers froze on the keyboard. She continued. "Back in high school, Mia pulled the same crap on me. Borrowed money, never paid back, then told everyone I was obsessed with her. She's been doing this forever. People just never push back." My chest tightened as I read her words. It wasn't just me. It was a pattern. Carla ended with, "If you need people to back you up, I'll tell my story. I'm sick of watching her play victim." For the first time since this whole mess started, I felt something other than anger or bitterness. I felt power. Because if I wasn't alone, if there were others out there with the same scars, the same receipts, then maybe, just maybe, this wasn't going to end with me on the defensive. Maybe this was only the beginning. Carla's message lit a fire in me. For weeks I had felt cornered, like I was fighting a two-headed beast alone. But now I realized Mia and Jason hadn't just used me. They'd left a trail of people they'd chewed up and spat out, all too tired or too afraid to speak. I called Carla the next night. Her voice was sharp, steady, like someone who'd been holding a secret for too long. "I loaned her $300 when we were 19, she said without hesitation. "I never saw a dime of it back, but worse than that, she spread a rumor that I was obsessed with her, that I couldn't get over our friendship. Made me look pathetic. I lost people because of her." And Jason, he pulled the same move with my brother. Borrowed tools, borrowed money, and when my brother finally asked for them back, Jason told everyone he was harassing him. I sat in silence, letting her words sink in. "You're not crazy, and you're not alone," Carla said firmly. "If you're ready to fight, I've got your back." That night, I started reaching out, quietly, discreetly. Mutual friends, old acquaintances, people I remembered Mia or Jason leaning on. At first, I wasn't sure anyone would talk, but one by one, stories trickled in. There was Luis, who had paid Jason's bar tab more times than he could count, only to be called clingy when he stopped. There was Dana, who babysat for Mia for free while Mia told everyone Dana was lazy and childish. And there was Mariah, who'd lent Mia $1,000 after her car broke down and was ghosted for months afterward. Every story echoed mine. Generosity repaid with betrayal. Kindness twisted into weakness. I didn't post right away. I wasn't impulsive anymore. Instead, I began building a case, a digital dossier carefully organized, screenshots, statements, timelines. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about pulling back the curtain on years of manipulation. But Mia and Jason weren't sitting idle. One Saturday afternoon, as I was leaving the grocery store, I ran into them both. They were waiting by Jason's car, arms folded, eyes blazing. Jason stepped forward. "We need to talk." I tightened my grip on my bags. "We don't." Mia's voice was sharp as glass. "You're obsessed. You're dragging our names through the dirt. For what? Attention? Likes on Facebook?" "For the truth," I shot back. Jason sneered. "You think anyone really cares about your little screenshots? People already see you for what you are. Bitter, lonely, desperate to be relevant." "Funny," I said, meeting his glare. "That's exactly what people told me about you." For a moment, silence hung heavy between us. Then Mia hissed, "You're going to regret this." I walked away without another word, but my pulse hammered. That wasn't a threat to take lightly. The following week proved it. I started getting phone calls from unknown numbers, hang-ups, heavy breathing, prank calls late into the night. Someone egged my car. My mailbox was stuffed with trash one morning. They were lashing out, escalating. And yet, the fear I should have felt wasn't there, because for the first time I knew they weren't untouchable. The more they tried to silence me, the more people came forward with their own stories, their own proof. The tide was shifting, and Mia and Jason could feel it slipping away. That's when I decided this wouldn't just be a Facebook feud anymore. It was going bigger. I drafted a long post. Not angry, not bitter, but factual. Names, dates, receipts. I laid out the pattern of manipulation, not just toward me, but toward half a dozen others who had agreed to let me share their experiences. And at the bottom, I wrote, "This isn't about me anymore. It's about a cycle of exploitation. If you've been used, lied to, or smeared by them, know you're not alone. Enough is enough." I hovered over the post button, my finger trembling. I knew once it went live, there was no turning back. This wasn't a family spat anymore. It was an expose. And when I finally pressed it, the ripple it sent through our circle was like a detonation, because this time it wasn't just my voice. It was an army. The explosion was immediate. By the time I woke up the next morning, my post had racked up hundreds of comments and shares. Friends tagged friends, co-workers tagged co-workers, old acquaintances tagged people I hadn't spoken to in years. Notifications swarmed my phone until the screen froze. What floored me most wasn't the attention, it was the stories. One by one, people came forward. Some commented publicly, others messaged me privately, but the chorus was the same. They did this to me, too. A woman named Erica wrote, "Mia borrowed $500 when I was between jobs. She never paid it back, then told people I was bitter because she got promoted before me." A guy I barely knew from high school, Chris, messaged, "Jason sold me his old guitar. A week later, he told everyone I stole it. I had to show the receipt to prove it." Even people I never expected chimed in. A former roommate of Mia's described how she skipped rent for months, then told the landlord the roommate was unstable and refused to work. It was like watching dominoes fall, one after another, years of quiet exploitation suddenly laid bare. "And Mia?" she snapped. By noon, she had posted a frantic live video, eyes red from crying, voice trembling with fury. "This is harassment," she sobbed into the camera. This is defamation. My own cousin is spreading lies, dragging my name through the dirt, turning people against me. I can't even leave my house without people staring. He's ruining my life." Comments scrolled by faster than she could read. Some were sympathetic, but most were not. Then explain the screenshots. Why does everyone have the same story? Girl, we've all seen the receipts. Jason tried a different tactic. His post was more polished, almost rehearsed. Family drama should never be aired online. What's happening right now is an attempt to destroy us, and it's sad. We've always helped others when we could, and now we're being attacked by people twisting the past. If you believe in loyalty, don't feed into the lies. But the replies under his post told a different story. Helped others? By begging for money and never paying it back? Loyalty goes both ways. Funny how everyone else is lying, but you two are innocent. The narrative they had controlled for so long was slipping away like sand through their fingers. That evening, I got another message, this one from someone I hadn't spoken to since college. "Hey," it read, "I've been following everything. You're brave for speaking up. I dated Jason for a few months back in the day. He borrowed money from me constantly, gas, rent, even food. When I finally called him out, he told people I was a psycho ex who wouldn't leave him alone. I stayed quiet because I didn't want the drama. But I'll tell my story if you need it." I sat there staring at the screen, my chest tight. How many people had they hurt? How many had stayed silent, like I almost did, because they didn't want to be smeared? The more I thought about it, the clearer it became. This wasn't just about family anymore. This was about exposure, about finally pulling the rug out from under two people who had walked over everyone for years. But with every story that came forward, every receipt that surfaced, the danger grew. Because Mia and Jason weren't just humiliated, they were cornered. And cornered people don't retreat quietly. The prank calls became threats, notes left on my car windshield. One night, as I came home from work, I saw a figure loitering near my building. They bolted when I got close, but my gut told me exactly who had sent them. This wasn't just a battle of words anymore. It was becoming something darker. And in the back of my mind, I knew. The screenshots were only the opening salvo. The real war was still coming. Within days, the air around me changed. It felt heavier, charged, like before a thunderstorm. The digital war had spilled into the real world, and everyone could feel it. Neighbors started asking questions when they saw me outside. Not in a curious, gossipy way, but cautiously. Like they wanted to pick a side but weren't sure which one was safe. My phone never stopped buzzing. More stories from people Mia and Jason had burned, more proof, more screenshots. But the threats were getting bolder, too. One evening, I came home from work and found my front door ajar. Nothing was stolen, but my kitchen drawers had been pulled open, my papers scattered. A single envelope sat on my counter, blank on the outside. Inside, a sheet of printer paper with one sentence in block letters. "Stop or else." My first reaction was pure rage. They thought intimidation would make me crawl back into my hole. But underneath that rage was something new. A cold, clear focus. If they were willing to cross the line into my home, it meant they were desperate. And desperate people make mistakes. I called the police, filed a report, and immediately installed cameras in my apartment. Not because I thought they'd swoop in and solve it, but because now I needed evidence of everything, every knock, every threat, every trespass. Meanwhile, my post had gone beyond our small circle. A popular local page picked it up, framing it as a cautionary tale about toxic family members. The comments section became a war zone. Some defended Mia and Jason, but the overwhelming tone was disbelief, anger, solidarity. People were sharing their own experiences with manipulative relatives. Mia tried another live video a few nights later, but this time her tears looked rehearsed. "They're trying to ruin me," she said, voice trembling. "They're taking everything out of context." I almost felt a flicker of pity, until she added, "He's unstable. He's been obsessed with me for years. I think he needs help. That was it. I clicked record on my own phone and went live for the first time. I didn't cry. I didn't raise my voice. I just spoke. My cousin and her brother have been calling me a burden while using me like an ATM. They've borrowed thousands and smeared me when I stopped. And I'm not the only one. Dozens of people have come forward. Here are their words. I scrolled through the stories on camera, showing faces, names, screenshots. Calm, factual, devastating. By the time I ended the stream, it had already been shared hundreds of times. People in the comments weren't just angry, they were organized. Someone posted, "Let's start a group to share stories about Mia and Jason. People need to know who they're dealing with." Within hours, there was a private Facebook group with dozens of members, all with receipts, all with their own scars. They posted old texts, PayPal requests, voicemails of apologies that were never repaid. It was like watching a dam burst. And yet, with each story shared, my anxiety ticked higher. Because I knew what was coming next. Mia and Jason wouldn't have tried to win online anymore. They'd try to win by crushing me offline. The first sign was a car that started parking across the street from my building. Same spot every night, lights off, engine idling. I'd glance at the window and see a silhouette, unmoving. By the time I got outside, it would drive away. The second sign was an email sent to my job's HR inbox from an anonymous address, accusing me of harassment and extortion. It was full of obvious lies, but it was enough to trigger a formal review. The third sign was a text from an unknown number. "Last warning. Take it all down." I didn't reply. Instead, I saved the text, sent it to the police with my case number, and went to the group chat where dozens of people were watching this unfold. "They're escalating," I wrote. "Be careful." Carla replied instantly. "We're with you. They can't hide anymore." I stared at the screen, feeling both terrified and strangely steady. For the first time in my life, I wasn't isolated. I wasn't the only one screaming into the void. They wanted to make me the villain. They wanted to make me disappear. But now, it wasn't just me versus them. It was me and an army of people they had wronged, all holding their own receipts, all ready to speak. And something deep inside me whispered, "They started this war. I'm going to finish it." The night after that last text, the storm finally broke. I woke at 3:14 a.m. to the sound of my phone vibrating violently on my nightstand. In the half-dark, the screen glowed with a dozen notifications, tags, messages, missed calls. My heart pounded. For a second, I thought it was another threat, but it wasn't. The private Facebook group had gone public. Carla, tired of hiding, had posted a massive, detailed thread of her own, names, screenshots, dates, backing up everything I'd said. And because she wasn't related to Mia and Jason, because she had nothing to lose, her post spread even faster than mine. By sunrise, it had crossed into Twitter, then Reddit. Strangers were dissecting the screenshots, piecing together timelines, calling it the family ATM scandal. Someone even made a TikTok summarizing the whole saga in 60 seconds. The comments were brutal. People weren't just angry, they were entertained. And with that, Mia and Jason's control of the story collapsed. They tried everything. Jason posted a long note about privacy and mental health, insisting he was stepping back from social media for his own peace. Mia shared a Bible quote about forgiveness and hinted she was the victim of a smear campaign, but no one bought it anymore. Their followers started asking the wrong questions. "Wait, didn't you borrow money from your cousin? Why do 5 other people have the same story? You owe how much?" Even people who had defended them quietly deleted their comments. That afternoon, a friend from town called me, breathless. "They're finished. People are canceling their babysitting gigs with Mia. Jason's boss saw the posts. He might get fired. It's everywhere." For a moment, sitting at my kitchen table, I felt something close to relief. This wasn't just a spat anymore. It was exposure. It was accountability. But the victory tasted strange. I didn't feel triumphant exactly. I felt like I'd been in a long, ugly fight and finally stopped swinging. Then my phone buzzed again. A private message from Mia. It wasn't a threat this time. It wasn't even an insult. Just 4 words. Please, make it stop. I stared at it for a long time. My anger told me to ignore her, to let the fallout run its course. But another part of me, the part that remembered the first late-night plea for help, the cousin I once cared about, hesitated. Before I could answer, another message arrived, this one from Jason. We're sorry. We'll pay back what we can. Just stop. Please. For a second, everything in me went quiet. This was what I'd wanted all along. Not humiliation, not revenge, but acknowledgement. Proof that I wasn't crazy. Proof that they knew what they'd done. I typed slowly, my fingers steady for the first time in months. I don't want your money. I wanted you to stop lying. I wanted you to stop smearing me while using me. If you're ready to admit that publicly, then maybe this can end. No response. Hours passed. Evening crept in. And then, at 8:27 p.m., Mia posted on her Facebook page, I've made mistakes. I've borrowed money and not repaid it. I've said things I shouldn't have said about someone who helped me more than once. I'm sorry. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't enough. But it was real. Jason posted something similar an hour later, shorter, but just as public. The messages stopped. The car across the street disappeared. The prank calls ended. It didn't magically fix everything. The family was still fractured, some cousins still cold, some friends still distant. But for the first time, I felt like I could breathe. When Carla called that night, she asked, "Do you feel better?" I thought about it. Not better, I said, but lighter. And for the first time in a long time, that was enough. Because the truth, once spoken, doesn't go back into hiding. And when you're called a burden, but the receipts prove otherwise, you don't just clear your name, you break the cycle. And sometimes, that's the real revenge. Weeks passed, and the noise finally began to die down. The screenshots, the exposés, the late-night lives, they were all archived now in the endless sprawl of the internet, impossible to erase but no longer burning hot. Mia stopped posting altogether. Her profile turned quiet, only the occasional shared meme or vague inspirational quote. Nothing personal. Jason, too, retreated. He deactivated his Facebook, then came back with a new account scrubbed of old connections. They'd gone from loud and mocking to silent and invisible, their once constant digital presence reduced to a whisper. But silence has its own ripple. At family gatherings, the air was different. I wasn't sure what I expected, confrontation maybe, or icy hostility. Instead, there was avoidance. Eyes slid past me, conversations shifted when I entered the room. Nobody wanted to address the elephant, but everyone knew it was there. My aunt still wouldn't speak to me. But interestingly, some cousins who had unfriended me months ago quietly added me back. A few even sent cautious messages. Hey, I didn't realize how deep it went. Sorry for not believing you. Just want you to know, I see you. It wasn't much, but it was something. Outside of family, though, things changed more dramatically. People I'd once thought of as acquaintances started treating me differently, respectfully, cautiously, even gratefully. The narrative had shifted. I wasn't the burden anymore. I was the one who stood up when everyone else stayed silent. But victory, I learned, doesn't mean peace. One night, as I sat scrolling through messages, I came across one from an unfamiliar name. You don't know me, but thank you. Seeing what you did gave me courage. It was followed by a story. Another person, different family, same patterns, manipulation, borrowing, lies. And as I read, I realized something unsettling. There were more Mias and Jasons out there. Too many. The thought gnawed at me. My fight had started personal, then grown wider, until it became almost symbolic. Now strangers saw me as a kind of proof, evidence that exposing toxicity was possible, that you didn't have to keep swallowing it just because it was family. That weight was heavy. And just when I thought things were settling, the phone rang late one night. An unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. The voice on the other end was low, bitter, familiar. "Jason." "You think this is over?" he hissed. "You embarrassed us. You ruined us. Don't think we'll forget." The line went dead before I could reply. I sat there, staring at the wall, my pulse hammering. For weeks, they'd been quiet, almost contrite. Now the venom was back, seeping through the cracks. They weren't finished with me. Not yet. And as I sat in the silence of my apartment, I realized something with a clarity that chilled me. The war hadn't ended. It had only gone underground. Mia and Jason had lost the public fight, but in the shadows, in the dark corners where there are no screenshots, no comment sections, no proof, that's where they were waiting, and sooner or later they'd strike again. The question was, when they did. Would I be ready? The answer to that question arrived sooner than I thought. 2 weeks after Jason's midnight call, a letter came through my mail slot. At first glance, it looked official, a thick envelope stamped with a local law firm's name. My heart did a slow roll as I tore it open. Inside was a crisp, intimidating letterhead: "Cease and desist." The letter accused me of defamation and harassment, ordering me to remove all posts, screenshots, and statements about Mia and Jason or face legal action. It even demanded I issue a public apology. I sat at my kitchen table, letter trembling in my hands, and for the first time since this began, I felt a flicker of real fear. Legal action wasn't like Facebook drama. This was serious. But then I read the last paragraph again, slowly. The accusations were vague. No dates, no specifics, no evidence. It was the legal equivalent of a scare tactic, and I wasn't alone anymore. Within an hour, I was on a call with Carla and a friend of hers who happened to be a paralegal. We went line by line through the letter. "It's bluff," the paralegal said flatly. "They're trying to intimidate you. If they really wanted to sue, they'd have to prove your statements were false. With the screenshots you've got, they'd lose." I felt a slow, cold steadiness creep back into me. "So what do I do?" "Nothing," she said. "Keep your posts up. Document everything. And if they want to take you to court, we'll be ready." That night, I posted a simple status, not naming names, not making new accusations, just this: "Some people think intimidation works. It doesn't. Receipts don't lie." It went viral again, but this time, something was different. Instead of just sympathy, there was outrage. People were openly mocking the legal threat, calling Mia and Jason cowards. A GoFundMe popped up overnight, people offering to cover legal fees if it came to that. The next morning, another message arrived, this time from Mia herself. It was a voice memo, not text. I hesitated before hitting play. Her voice was small, hoarse. "I didn't know Jason was sending letters. I didn't know he called you. I can't do this anymore. Please, I just want this to stop. I'll pay back what I owe. I'll write whatever you want me to write. Just please. Stop." For a long time, I sat staring at my phone. This wasn't the defiant Mia from before. This was someone cornered, stripped of her armor. I typed back slowly. "This stops when you stop lying. When you admit what you did. Not just to me, to everyone." No reply came. But a few days later, a long post appeared on her profile. No crying emojis, no Bible verses. Just words. "I have hurt people who helped me. I have taken and not given back. I have lied to protect myself. I'm sorry." It wasn't perfect, but it was public. Jason, predictably, stayed silent. But a week later, the car stopped idling across the street. The hang-up calls ended. The threats dried up, and for the first time in months, my apartment felt quiet, peaceful. The fallout was messy. Relationships permanently fractured, some family members angry at me for airing dirty laundry, others quietly thanking me for having the courage they didn't. But the narrative was no longer in Mia and Jason's hands. It wasn't in mine either. It belonged to the truth. One evening, Carla and I met for coffee. She looked at me over her mug, a small smile on her face. "You know," she said, "this isn't just about them anymore. You showed people it's okay to say no, to speak up. You changed the script." I stared at my reflection in the dark coffee and thought about everything, the screenshots, the nights of panic, the letter on my table. "It doesn't feel like victory," I admitted. "It's not supposed to," Carla said gently. "It's supposed to feel like freedom." And maybe she was right. Because when you've been called a burden for long enough, you start to believe it. You shrink, you apologize, you go quiet. But when you drag the truth into the light and it stands there, undeniable, you don't just win an argument. You get your life back. And as I walked out of that cafe into the evening sun, I realized I was finally free. Freedom felt strange, almost too quiet. After months of buzzing phones, sleepless nights, and confrontation at every turn, waking up without dread felt unnatural, like I'd stepped into someone else's life. For days, I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, for another car outside my building, another anonymous message, another threat disguised as legalese. But nothing came. Mia kept her word, at least partially. A few small payments trickled in through Cash App. $50 here, $100 there. It wasn't close to what she owed, but it was more than I'd ever expected. More importantly, she stayed silent. No more pity posts, no more sly jabs. Her profile became nothing but shared recipes and funny videos, the digital equivalent of laying low. Jason, on the other hand, vanished. His account deleted, his phone number changed, his name scrubbed from group chats. The only time I heard about him was through whispers. He'd lost his job, he was couch surfing, he was taking time to figure things out. I didn't believe the last part. Jason had never figured anything out in his life. Family gatherings remained tense, but the dynamic had shifted. I was no longer the one people snickered about. If anything, it was Mia and Jason's absence that hovered in the air like a ghost. Some relatives still gave me side-eye, muttering about airing family business, but others, quietly, carefully, pulled me aside to say, "You were right." It wasn't validation I needed, but it was nice to hear. The private Facebook group kept growing, even after the dust settled. It wasn't just about Mia and Jason anymore. It became a space for people to share their own stories of being used, manipulated, or smeared by family. Strangers bonded over shared scars. Receipts were posted, advice exchanged. Some called it petty. I called it survival. And then one night, scrolling through the group, I saw a post that stopped me cold. It was from someone I didn't know, in another state entirely. They wrote, "I've been quiet for years about my sister who did the same things. Borrowing, lying, turning people against me. I thought no one would believe me. Then I saw that story online, about a guy exposing his cousin with screenshots. It gave me the courage to finally speak. Thank you, whoever you are." My chest tightened as I read it again and again. They didn't know it was me. They didn't need to. The story had outgrown me, taken on a life of its own. And that's when it hit me. I hadn't just defended myself. I'd cracked something open for others too. Still, scars don't vanish overnight. Some nights I woke in a sweat, hearing Jason's voice in my head. "You think this is over?" Sometimes, walking down the street, I'd glance over my shoulder, half expecting a shadow to follow. Trauma lingers even after the battle is won. But every time doubt crept in, I reminded myself of one thing. I wasn't the burden. I never was. The burden had always been them, their lies, their neediness, their endless cycle of taking without giving. And for the first time, that weight wasn't on my shoulders anymore. It was theirs to carry, and I would never pick it up again. Months later, life began to stitch itself back together. The chaos had left behind cracks. Relationships strained, trust fractured, but cracks can let light in too. I noticed small shifts. The way people who once avoided me now sought me out. The way strangers in town sometimes gave me a nod, a look that said, "I saw what you did, and I respect it." Mia stayed on the periphery. She didn't block me, but she didn't speak to me either. Every now and then, I'd see her post a photo of her kid, a bland caption about new beginnings or focusing on family. It was almost eerie how normal she was trying to look, as if the storm had never happened. Jason remained a ghost. Whispers said he'd moved out of town, maybe chasing work, maybe running from shame. I didn't care enough to find out. Some people you stop chasing, not because you forgive them, but because they're not worth the energy anymore. And me? I learned to live lighter. The private Facebook group I'd helped spark had grown beyond anything I imagined. Thousands of members now from every corner of the country. They shared stories, screenshots, survival tactics. Some even met up in person, calling it a receipts support group. I wasn't its leader, just one of many voices, but people still messaged me privately, thanking me for starting a conversation they never thought they'd be brave enough to have. One evening, Carla and I sat in that same cafe where she told me I wasn't to fighting alone. She stirred her coffee, looking thoughtful. "You realize you started a movement, right?" she asked. I laughed. "I just hit post." She shook her head. "No, you showed people it's okay to call things what they are, that you don't have to keep swallowing lies because they come from family." Her words stayed with me. Because she was right. Before this, I would have kept bending, kept forgiving, kept paying the price in silence. But now? Now I understood the value of my voice. One night, scrolling through messages, I found one that made me pause. "Do you ever regret it?" I stared at the screen for a long time before answering. No, I regret waiting so long. The story became folklore in our circles. "Remember when Mia and Jason got exposed?" People would whisper, shaking their heads, laughing nervously. The screenshots had burned themselves into memory, impossible to deny. And though the family tree still bore scars, I no longer carried their weight. The label of burden, once flung at me like a weapon, had lost all meaning, because the truth had set me free. And freedom, I realized, wasn't quiet or tidy. It was messy, raw and loud, but it was mine, forever mine. Years later, the storm felt like a story someone else had lived, but the lessons stayed burned into me like scars that had healed clean. Life moved forward in ways I didn't expect. The Facebook group had grown into an actual nonprofit with volunteers, small grants, and local chapters where people could gather in person. We called it Receipts Rising. A tongue-in-cheek name that meant something deeper. Documentation as self-defense. Proof as liberation. I wasn't its face anymore. Younger, sharper people had stepped up to run it. But every so often someone would track me down to say, "You started this." I'd smile, shake my head. "I just posted. You all built the rest." Carla became a close friend. We still met for coffee once a month, laughing about how two people who'd been smeared as obsessed ended up building a network of survivors. She liked to tease me that one day I'd write a book about all this. Not a tell-all, she said. A guide for people stuck in the same trap. I wasn't sure yet, but the idea no longer felt impossible. Mia and Jason remained ghosts. Word floated back sometimes. Mia had moved to another state, working quietly, trying to rebuild. Jason bounced from job to job, sometimes getting into more trouble, sometimes disappearing completely. I no longer checked their profiles. They weren't part of my life anymore. Not really. Family gatherings became civil again, if not warm. Some relatives still stiffened when I walked in, but others greeted me with real hugs now. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. And honesty, I'd learned, was worth more than a fake peace. Every so often, someone from the old circle would pull me aside and whisper, "I wish I'd spoken up sooner too." And I'd tell them the same thing. It's never too late. Even if nobody listens, you'll hear yourself. And that was the biggest shift of all. I'd gone from someone who saved every message out of fear. What if they lie? What if no one believes me? To someone who didn't need the proof anymore to know my own worth. One evening, scrolling through the nonprofits forum, I saw a young woman post, "My brother calls me a burden but still asks for money every week. I don't know how to stop it." Without thinking, I typed back, "You're not the burden. You're the lifeline they're draining. You have the right to set boundaries, and you're not alone." As I hit send, I realized how full circle it had all come. Once upon a time, I was the one whispering into the void, saving screenshots in the dark, afraid of what speaking would cost me. Now I was the person on the other side, reaching back, handing someone else a rope. The screenshots had started as weapons. They'd ended as proof. But the real victory wasn't in the exposure. It was in reclaiming my voice and keeping it. Always. The rope I'd thrown out to that young woman pulled something unexpected back to me. A week later, she sent me a private message. I finally told him no. First time ever. He screamed, called me selfish, said I'd regret it, but I didn't cave. I blocked his number. For once, I feel like I can breathe. Thank you. I read it twice, then a third time, smiling to myself. That was it. The cycle breaking, right there in her words. It didn't take courts or exposés or viral posts. Sometimes it just took one person saying no. It reminded me of the night I finally hit send on that first reply to Mia S. Facebook insult. The moment my own silence cracked. That small decision had set fire to everything. Painful, messy, costly. But it had also cleared space for a life I wouldn't trade for anything. Years had passed, but echoes of the storm still followed me. At the grocery store, people still whispered sometimes, "That's the one who exposed his cousins." Not cruelly, more like reverently, as though I'd carried out a kind of public service. Online, the receipts rising community kept growing. Thousands of stories now from all over the world. Some heartbreaking, some triumphant, all woven together by the simple truth that being used doesn't make you a burden. Every once in a while, I'd still get the stray anonymous jab. A burner account posting. "You're bitter. You ruined your family." I'd just smile because bitterness didn't feel like this. Bitterness is carrying someone else's weight. What I felt was lightness. What I felt was freedom. And then came the reunion. Not family. No, that bridge was long burned. This was a high school reunion, years overdue. I almost didn't go. But curiosity won. The moment I walked into the banquet hall, I felt the eyes on me. Not mocking, not pitying. Curious, almost respectful. A few people approached, hesitant smiles on their faces. "You're the one with the screenshots, right?" one of them asked. I laughed. "Guess that's my legacy." But then she shook her head. "No, you're the one who stood up." It hit me like a punch, the truth of it. Screenshots were just tools. Standing up, refusing to let the lies stick, refusing to carry the false label of burden, that was the real story. Later that night, walking home under the soft hum of streetlights, I thought about Mia and Jason. I wondered if they ever thought about me, if they ever replayed the moment they pressed post on that insult that sparked the fire. I wondered if they regretted it, but the wondering passed quickly, because their story wasn't mine anymore. Mine was this. I had been called a burden. I had been mocked, smeared, silenced. And then I had spoken, and the echo of that choice was still rippling outward, years later, in strangers' lives I'd never touch, in voices I'd never hear, in stories I'd never know. That was my ending. Not revenge, not even victory. Legacy. And legacies, I'd learned, are built one word of truth at a time. Legacy has a strange way of following you, even when you stop chasing it. A few years after the dust had fully settled, I was invited to speak at a small community center downtown. They were hosting a workshop on toxic family dynamics and boundaries. And someone in the Receipts Rising group had recommended me. At first, I laughed at the idea. Me? A speaker? I wasn't a professional, I wasn't a therapist. I was just a guy who finally snapped one night on Facebook. But the organizer insisted. You don't need credentials. You have experience. People will listen. So I went. The room was modest. Folding chairs, a coffee urn in the corner, maybe 30 people scattered across the rows. But when I started telling my story, the barbecue joke that wasn't funny, the first Facebook insult, the screenshots that turned the tide, I saw their faces change. Some nodded, some teared up. Some sat utterly still, eyes wide, like I was saying things they had never dared put into words. When I finished, the room erupted in questions. How do you know when it's time to stop forgiving? What if they're your only family? Do you regret making it public? I answered as honestly as I could. You stop forgiving when forgiveness is just permission for them to hurt you again. Blood isn't a free pass. And no, I don't regret going public. Not because it was easy, but because silence was killing me. Afterward, a man in his 60s shook my hand. I wish I'd had your courage when I was your age, he said quietly. Would have saved me decades of pain. Walking home that night, I realized something. The story wasn't just mine anymore. It had become a lantern. Other people picked it up, carried it into their own dark places. And in that way, the pain had transformed into something useful. Mia never showed her face again in my world. I heard through the grapevine that she'd remarried, moved states, started over. Jason, last I heard, was still drifting, half rumor, half myth. Their names didn't sting anymore. They were just people I used to know, ghosts who had taught me lessons at too high a cost. The real story lived elsewhere. In that Facebook group, in the community center, in the quiet DMs from strangers saying, because of you, I finally said no. And one night, years later, I sat at my desk, staring at a blank page. I thought about Carla's teasing all those years ago, about writing a guide, about telling the story in a way that could outlast the internet's memory. So I began to type. Not about revenge, not about shame, but about survival, boundaries, and the truth of never being anyone's burden. It wasn't polished, it wasn't perfect, but it was mine. And as the words filled the page, I felt it again, that lightness, that freedom. The kind you only find when you finally stop carrying what was never yours to bear. The story had started with screenshots, but it would end with something stronger. A voice, unshakable, unapologetic, forever mine. The manuscript took years, not months. I wrote in stolen hours, before work, late at night, on weekends when the world outside felt too heavy. At first, the words came jagged, raw, like wounds not fully closed. But slowly they smoothed into something sharper, clearer, a blueprint for anyone trapped in the same cycle I once lived. I titled it, Not the Burden. When I finally handed the draft to Carla, my stomach twisted with nerves. She read it in 2 days flat, then slammed it on my table with tears in her eyes. This isn't just your story, she whispered. This is everyone's. I didn't expect much when I self-published, maybe a handful of readers, mostly friends from Receipts Rising. But the book spread further than I imagined. People left reviews saying it gave them the courage to cut ties, to demand repayment, to stop apologizing for existing. Therapists recommended it to clients. Support groups ordered it in bulk. And then one morning, I woke up to an email from a national talk show. They wanted me to come on, to talk about toxic family culture and how ordinary people can stand up against it. The thought of sitting under bright studio lights made my palms sweat. But then I thought of the kid in me, the one who once swallowed every insult, who believed he was the burden. He deserved to hear the truth out loud. The day of the taping, I sat across from the host, cameras rolling, and told the story from the beginning. The midnight pleas for money, the barbecue insult, the Facebook post, the screenshots that became my shield. And then I said the words I had learned the hard way. Being used doesn't make you a burden, it makes you a target. And the moment you say no, the moment you shine a light on it, you stop being the victim and start being free. The audience clapped, some even stood. But more than the applause, it was the messages afterward that hit me hardest. Strangers saying, "I thought I was alone, now I know I'm not." Mia and Jason never reached out again. By then, their names barely registered as more than echoes. They were the storm I had passed through, nothing more. What mattered was this. The story that once nearly broke me had become a bridge. People were walking across it, toward freedom, toward boundaries, toward truth. And as I looked back on everything, the screenshots, the smear campaigns, the threats, the silence, I realized something simple, something final. They tried to bury me under the weight of their lies, but in digging myself out, I uncovered something stronger. Not shame, not bitterness, but a voice. A voice that no one could call a burden ever again. In the end, it was never really about Facebook posts or screenshots. It was about power, who held it, who abused it, and who finally took it back. Mia and Jason will always have to live with the trail of broken trust they left behind. I don't. I walked out from under it. The labels they tried to pin on me, burden, dead weight, problem, fell away the moment I refused to carry them. What stayed was the truth. That I gave, that I helped, that I endured. And when I finally demanded accountability, I proved something they could never erase. The final conclusion is simple. They lost their masks and I found my voice. Their lies scattered, but my truth stood firm. And in speaking it, I reclaimed not just my name, but my life. That is the ending. Not revenge, not ruin, freedom.